On a country road in France in March 1989, a 32-year-old actress's car drifted off the road.
So I think I made that transition pretty well. I don't know what's in store next.
7 years earlier, she had played a princess in the biggest sword and sorcery film of the decade. Almost nobody remembers her name.
I've been trained for stage, and I feel I know what I'm doing. I have a better sense of my responsibility.
Today, we're walking through all 11 cast members of 1982's Conan the Barbarian, the affair that blew up a marriage, the best friend who drowned.
Because nobody has a body like mine. So what happens is I have to do a lot of the stunts myself. I have to do a lot of mountain climbing, fast horseback riding, riding on elephants or camels, and these are all crazy animals we're talking about.
The surfer nobody recognized, and one goodbye I think Arnold Schwarzenegger never recovered from. Gerry Lopez, Subotai. Let's start with a man standing right next to Arnold for half of this film, and the secret he carried on to set that almost nobody recognized. Subotai, the Mongol thief who becomes Conan's first real friend, the grinning, light-footed warrior with a bow.
Started surfing in the 1958, yeah, a long time ago.
The chemistry between him and Arnold, most of it was real, because while Gerry Lopez was on set in Spain playing a fantasy warrior, in his real life, he was one of the greatest surfers who had ever lived. So how did one of the greatest surfers in the world end up standing next to Arnold Schwarzenegger with a bow and arrow? He grew up in Honolulu. By his 20s, he was the undisputed king of one wave in particular, the Banzai Pipeline on Oahu, the most dangerous wave in the world. They called him Mr. Pipeline. He co-founded Lightning Bolt Surfboards, the most recognizable surf brand of the 1970s. He's in the Surfing Hall of Fame. Director John Milius was himself a serious surfer.
None of us had any idea that it was going to grow as big as it did. If we had thought about that or known that, we'd be rich.
He wanted a real athlete who could move like a warrior, not an actor pretending. Gerry could move. Today, at 77, Gerry Lopez lives in Bend, Oregon. He still surfs. He builds surfboards by hand. He teaches yoga, exactly where he wants to be. But the next man on this list spent the next 40 years standing right next to Arnold on almost every film he ever made. 2. Sven-Ole Thorsen, Thorgrim. You may not remember the name. You'll remember the size. Thorgrim, the towering, war-hammered henchman of Falsa Doom that Conan cuts down in the temple. A Dane named Sven-Ole Thorsen. There's one reason Sven appeared in nearly every Arnold film for 4 decades, and it has nothing to do with acting. He met Arnold in 1978 at a powerlifting competition in Denmark, where Sven was the reigning national champion. They became friends almost instantly.
Jeg havde Annika med min svenske kone, så ja, min kone kan bevidne. Er det ikke rigtigt, Annika, hvad jeg siger nu? Jo, så er hun ikke køn, så jo, hun er køn.
When Arnold started getting movie roles big enough to bring his friends along, Sven came, and he never left. Conan the Barbarian, Predator, The Running Man, Twins, Last Action Hero, End of Days, Sven is in all of them. He even turned up as Tigress of Gaul in Gladiator, fighting Russell Crowe in the Colosseum. When Arnold's marriage collapsed in 2011, and we will absolutely get to that, Sven was one of the people he leaned on hardest. Sven-Ole Thorsen is 81 years old now, officially retired. He lives quietly in California, still close to Arnold, still family.
Så Ted Kennedy bagefter kom op til Arnold og sagde, hvad søren det for en gadedreng, du inviterede ham der, den store.
But while Sven was the friend who stayed, the next man on this list walked into the Conan set carrying more dramatic weight than every other actor combined. Max von Sydow, King Osric. You remember him, the white-haired, weary king who hires Conan and Subotai to rescue his daughter?
I started out, I didn't try or didn't dream of becoming a movie actor when I was a boy.
One extended scene, and that one scene lifts the whole picture. And here's what most fans never put together. Before Conan, Max von Sydow had already played the priest in The Exorcist, the most terrifying film of the 1970s. He had played Jesus in The Greatest Story Ever Told. He had made 11 films with Ingmar Bergman, including the legendary chess game with death in The Seventh Seal. By any honest measure, he was one of the most respected actors alive. He showed up in a sword and sorcery picture because, by his own admission, he simply liked working. He never stopped.
My friends and I, we were sent by the school to see the important shows there. And some friends of mine and I decided we have to do theaters.
He earned a second Oscar nomination at 82 without speaking a single word in the entire film. He played the three-eyed raven in Game of Thrones. He turned up in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. 6 decades of work. Max von Sydow died on March 8, 2020 at his home in Provence, France.
My first paid job there, I don't know really. They put to the students sometimes small parts in the main productions there.
He was 90 years old, a long, dignified life, the kind almost no actor ever gets. But the next person on this list was once a great deal closer to Arnold than the public knew at the time. Cassandra Gava, the Witch. Now here's the face most fans struggle to place. The Witch.
Wind that would create the hair to go crazy. Then I had these teeth that were very uncomfortable.
The mysterious woman in the burned-out cottage in the snow who seduces Conan and then transforms in his arms. She's in only a few minutes of the film, but the scene was the one 19-year-olds in 1982 were absolutely talking about on Monday morning. Her name was Cassandra Gava. Here's what almost nobody knew at the time. Off-screen, during the years around the making of Conan, Cassandra Gava and Arnold Schwarzenegger had been quietly involved. This was the Venice Beach Arnold, the gym rat Mr. Olympia turned movie star, years before Maria Shriver, years before the governorship, in the middle of a parade of women that the gossip pages of the 1980s only got half of.
It's like a bird dog. I had this tube right here, 2 tubes in each end. If I moved either way, I could stab myself, so I wasn't going to move.
Arnold himself, in his later memoir, was candid about it. Cassandra was one of those women. But here's the part that makes her different. Years later, when Arnold's scandals broke wide open and every tabloid in America was hunting for women from his early years, Cassandra said nothing. No tell-all, no talk show circuit, no payday. She kept it private. She raised her family. She walked away.
So basically I was like, okay, and then the nails. So I was not comfortable. There was nothing sensual, erotic.
She is believed to be in her mid-60s now, living quietly out of the spotlight. One of the very few women from Arnold's wild Venice Beach years who never tried to monetize what she knew. But while Cassandra stayed quiet, the next man on this list narrated the entire film, and almost nobody knows what he did when the camera stopped. Mako, the Wizard. You remember the narrator, the wise old voice that opens the film telling you what is best in life. The wizard who guards Conan's body in the final battle and brings him back from the dead. His name was Mako. And here's the part most fans never knew. He was born Makoto Iwamatsu in Kobe, Japan in 1933. His parents were artists working in America when World War II broke out, and suddenly they couldn't go home. Mako was raised in Japan by his grandparents, then sent to join his parents in the States as a teenager. He learned English largely by watching movies. Think about that for a second. He learned the language by watching films, and then earned an Oscar nomination in 1966 for The Sand Pebbles opposite Steve McQueen. He spent the rest of his life as one of the most respected character actors of his generation, and quietly built the longest-running Asian American theater company in the country in his spare time. Mako died of esophageal cancer on July 21, 2006, at his home in Somis, California, surrounded by his family. He was 72. Which one surprised you the most so far? Because from here, we lose people. The next 4 stories are the ones I almost couldn't get through. Ben Davidson, Rexer. Rexer, Thulsa Doom's right-hand enforcer, the towering, mustachioed warrior who goes head-to-head with Conan in the final battle and very nearly wins. The actor was Ben Davidson, and he didn't just look like a warrior, he'd been one for real. Because before he ever set foot on a Conan set, Ben Davidson was one of the most feared defensive ends in the National Football League. Drafted in 1961, he became a fixture of the Oakland Raiders in their roughest, most dominant era, the era of helmet-to-helmet hits and bare-knuckle football. Three-time AFL All-Star, he played in Super Bowl II. His handlebar mustache and his 6'8" frame became one of the most photographed faces in 1960s sports. When his football career ended, Hollywood came calling. He played heavies in MASH, in The Black Six, in dozens of guest spots. Conan was his biggest single role. And here's where the story gets harder. In the early 2000s, Ben Davidson was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He fought it for years, mostly out of the public eye. He died on July 2, 2012 in Walnut Creek, California, surrounded by his wife and his daughter. He was 72 years old. The Raiders held a moment of silence for him before their next home game. Opponents who had once feared him on the field wrote tributes. For a generation of football fans, he was Big Ben. For a generation of fantasy film fans, he was Rexor. He somehow got to be both. But while we lost Ben to a long illness, the next person on this list disappeared from Hollywood not because she was sick, but because she chose to. Sandahl Bergman, Valeria. The thief, the warrior, the woman who fights beside Conan and dies in his arms. The most iconic female warrior in 1980s fantasy cinema.
I am a product of musical theater, a 6-year veteran in New York City.
The year Conan came out, Sandahl Bergman won a Golden Globe, New Star of the Year. Now here's what most fans don't know. Sandahl Bergman wasn't trained as an actress. She was a dancer, a serious, classically trained Broadway dancer who had worked with Bob Fosse on the original All That Jazz. Fosse personally recommended her to John Milius for Conan. The reason every fight scene she's in looks like choreographed art, because for her, it was. After Conan, Hollywood absolutely came knocking. She had her pick of leading lady offers.
Could probably continued in that realm for a long time, but I wanted to explore another media.
She made Hell Comes to Frogtown. She made She made Red Sonja. Arnold even cameoed for her. Briefly, the queen of early 1980s fantasy. And then she just stepped back. She never gave a big tell-all about why. In interviews, she said quietly that the roles being offered weren't the ones she wanted, that the industry wasn't built for women in their 40s, that she was tired of being asked to play the same warrior over and over. She moved to Arizona. She taught dance. She kept her private life genuinely private.
Valeria is a woman of movement and incredible flexibility, and I mean, she's the best.
Sandahl Bergman is 74 years old now and very much alive. She still teaches. She still occasionally appears at conventions where fans show up with their VHS copies of Conan to ask her to sign them. She's gracious, she's warm, and she has never once seemed to regret walking away. But the next person on this list never got the chance to choose. Her story is the one I asked you to stay for. 8. Valerie Quennessen, the Princess. The Princess. King Osric's daughter, kidnapped by Thulsa Doom's cult, who Conan and Subutai are sent to rescue. She doesn't have a name in the film, she doesn't have many lines, but when you see her in that final scene, alive, returned to her father, you feel the whole movie land. Her name was Valerie Quennessen, and here's what most fans never knew about her. Valerie Quennessen was French. She was born in Paris on February 17, 1957. She came up through European film in the late 1970s and crossed over to American cinema in the early 1980s. She was, by everyone's account, luminous on camera. The year before Conan, she had starred in a coming-of-age romance called Summer Lovers opposite Peter Gallagher, set on the Greek islands. A whole generation of teenagers fell in love with her in that film. She did a few more pictures after Conan, and then in the late 1980s, she decided to step away from Hollywood entirely. She moved back to France. She wanted a quieter life. She was 31 years old. On March 8, 1989, Valerie Quenison was a passenger in a car driving through the French countryside near Bonneval, southwest of Paris. The car crashed. She was killed almost instantly. She was 32 years old. She had been out of the public eye for less than 2 years. Most of the American press barely covered it. No big obituary, no televised memorial. The French press ran the story. The world quietly moved on. She would have been in her late 60s today. She almost certainly would have come back into film eventually, the way actresses of her generation often do, for the late career Renaissance roles. We never got to see it. The princess in Conan the Barbarian is, today, one of the most quietly forgotten deaths in 1980s Hollywood. Now you know. But she isn't the only person on this set whose goodbye still hurts. The next one is the heaviest in this whole video, and the one I think Arnold himself has never fully gotten over. Franco Columbu, Pictish Scout. You might not recognize the name from the credits. You will recognize him from Arnold's life. Franco Columbu. Short, stocky, immensely powerful, he plays the Pictish scout Conan kills early in the film with a single brutal punch. A blink and you miss it part, but Franco Columbu's connection to Conan goes far, far deeper than the role he played. Because Franco was Arnold Schwarzenegger's best friend. They had been since 1965. They met in Munich, two immigrants in a foreign country, one from Austria, one from a tiny mountain village in Sardinia. They moved to America together. They trained together at Gold's Gym in Venice Beach. They competed against each other for Mr. Olympia and stayed best friends through it. Franco won the Mr. Olympia title in 1976 and again in 1981. Pound for pound, one of the strongest men who ever competed. He was at Arnold's wedding. He was godfather to one of Arnold's children. When Arnold made movies, he brought Franco along. The Terminator, The Running Man, Conan, brothers in everything but blood. On August 30th, 2019, Franco Columbu was swimming in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of his hometown of Ololai in Sardinia. He had returned to the island where he was born for the summer, as he did every year. While he was in the water, he suffered a heart attack. By the time he was pulled to shore, he was gone. He was 78 years old. Arnold was traveling back from Europe when he got the call. He has said more than once that losing Franco was the hardest single day of his adult life. At the funeral in Sardinia, Arnold gave the eulogy. He could barely get through it. He called Franco the brother he chose. Years later, he still tears up talking about him. The man returned to the island where he was born, and the sea took him home. But while Franco's goodbye was sudden and devastating, the next man on this list lived almost a full century and gave us one of the most decorated careers in American entertainment history. James Earl Jones, Thulsa Doom. Almost nobody watching Conan in 1982 realized they'd already heard this voice before. Thulsa Doom, the serpent god who killed Conan's parents and crucified him on the Tree of Woe. James Earl Jones gave us one of the great movie villains of the 1980s.
The role I play is, again, the villain. I'll call him a prehistoric Darth Vader.
He never raises his voice. He delivers the line, the riddle of steel, that the whole film orbits around. Here's something most fans never knew. The voice of Darth Vader, the voice of Mufasa. As a child, James Earl Jones was functionally mute, a severe stutter that lasted from age 5 to 14.
He's the Batman. He's a sorcerer. He's the one that causes much of the evil that Conan has to combat in the...
He communicated through written notes. A high school English teacher named Donald Crouch challenged him to read his own poetry aloud. Something broke open that day.
Well, it's going to be an important film. I'm not talking about how the critics receive it or how the box office receives it.
He won Tony Awards, an Emmy, a Grammy, an honorary Oscar, EGOT status. One of the most decorated actors of his generation. James Earl Jones died on September 9th, 2024, at his home in Pawling, New York. He was 93 years old. A long, properly celebrated life, the kind almost no actor gets. But the man who anchored this whole film had a life after Conan that almost destroyed him. 11. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Conan Arnold. In 1982, Arnold Schwarzenegger was 35, a former Mr. Olympia, a recent American citizen with one good Hollywood movie to his name.
You get in a lot of dangerous situations, but what it does is it makes you stretch. It makes you grow as a person.
By 1984, he was the Terminator. By 1988, the highest paid actor in Hollywood. He married Maria Shriver, Kennedy royalty meeting Hollywood royalty. By 2003, he was governor of California. By 2011, almost all of it was on fire. For years, Arnold had been having an affair with the family housekeeper, Mildred Baena.
Arnold and Gerry Lopez and myself, we all three did train. I trained 3 months.
In 1997, she gave birth to a son, Joseph Baena, who grew up inside Arnold's own home, alongside Arnold and Maria's 4 children. Maria found out years later. She filed for divorce. It dragged on for 10 years. Arnold lost the marriage. He lost the public trust he'd spent decades building. And yet, he came back. The Terminator sequels, Maggie, a YouTube audience of millions. He has said in interview after interview that the affair was the single worst decision of his life.
For competition, I used to train 4 hours a day, but since I'm not competing anymore, for this film, for instance, I'm training.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is 78 years old today, still in the gym every morning, still working. The legend, somehow, is still being written. So that's all 11. 11 actors, one of the most iconic films of the 1980s, 44 years on. 6 are gone. Valerie Quennison in 1989, Mako in 2006, Ben Davidson in 2012, Franco Columbu in 2019, Max von Sydow in 2020, James Earl Jones in 2024. 5 are still with us. Sandahl Bergman, Gerry Lopez, Sven-Ole Thorsen, Cassandra Gava, and Arnold himself. Sven, the oldest, is 81. Arnold is 78. Gerry Lopez is 77 and still surfing the same waves he was riding when Conan came out.